Hello everyone and welcome to this month's episode of Jig Retro, where we look into the SNES classic Super Metroid. If you enjoy this video, then please check out my other content on my Jig Retro Gamer YouTube channel, as well as like, share and subscribe to get the latest monthly episodes as they arrive. The Metroid series was first introduced to us by developer Yoshiro Sakamoto in 1986, and this game was incredibly ahead of its time, possibly a bit too far ahead of its time, with a non-linear approach to its gameplay. With the capabilities of the NES, they did an incredible job, but a lot of backgrounds and environments felt super samey, and therefore it was super easy to get lost. With the lack of map, I feel that this game is practically unplayable unless you go through some sort of strategy guide. Although at the time you can't deny that the concept was groundbreaking. With a clever final twist, it is revealed that the main protagonist that you've been playing with all along is actually a female. And this is one of the many references to the movie Alien that you'll see in this series. In 1992, Metroid 2 Samus Returns was released on the Game Boy and is a continuation of the story. This time Samus aims to eradicate the whole Metroid species. I feel that this game is a small improvement over the original and introduces many elements and abilities that become a mainstay in this series. The slightly more linear approach in this sequel eases the getting lost factor massively. Now let's move on to the main focus of this episode, which is Super Metroid. It took a lot of aspects from previous games before it, but improved it so much that it almost felt like an original game in itself. In 1994, Super Metroid was released for the SNES, and somehow it had completely slipped me by. I owned a Mega Drive back in the day, and the idea of owning two consoles was a lot less prevalent than it is today. It was only really preserved for the spoiled kids. Luckily for me, a great friend of mine owned a Super Nintendo, and he introduced me to games such as Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario All-Stars, Killer Instinct, among many others. But even then, somehow, for some reason, Super Metroid still bypassed us. Moving to more recent times, I just started getting involved in collecting video games, and I'd bought myself a Game Boy Advance while collecting a few of the better games from that system that I remembered. During this time, my brother lent me Metroid Fusion for the system, and I was completely hooked. It came from completely left field. I didn't even know that this genre of game existed. It was not what I was expecting it to be. I was kind of expecting it to be a super brutal action platformer such as Contra, Castlevania, and at the time those sort of games were way too frustrating for me. Luckily, my taste in very difficult, hard action platformers has changed over the years. This was the first Metroidvania that I had ever experienced. Anyway, this led me to Super Metroid. After a little look on the internet, I quickly purchased it from, at the time, the Wii Virtual Console store, and loved every aspect of playing it. This game has been my main influence for my obsession with retro video gaming. It obviously has the original released on the SNES, a Wii Virtual Console release, a Wii U Virtual Console release, and a 3DS Virtual Console release, as well as the Switch Online and the SNES Mini. I know that at least the Virtual Console for the original Wii is closed down now, but you owe it to yourselves to seek out this game and play it, that's for sure. This game oozes atmosphere and has one major pop culture influence, and that's the Alien movie. I mean, from the main protagonist being female, one of the main bosses being called Ridley, as in Ridley Scott, Mother Brain, and the Metroids attached to Samus, very similar to the facehuggers from the movie. The Chozo statues scattered around the map also strongly resemble the space jockey found in the first Alien movie. But the biggest influence that I can tell is the way that the game just makes you feel isolated, the same as the movie does. As soon as you select a new game, a creepy robotic voice comes in with,
"The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace."
We then proceed to get caught up with the story up to this point from Metroid and Metroid 2 in the upgraded Super Metroid graphics. Samus then receives a distress signal from the research station that she had just left the final Metroid in. She rushes back to aid. In my opinion, this leads to one of the greatest intros in video games ever. This is the first time you hear the soundtrack. It's not full of banging tunes that you're going to be dancing around to in your pants in your living room, but it is fantastic. It's like the most important character in the game. Subtle, haunting brilliance. This entire soundtrack oozes atmosphere. Simple, yet helps create the character or mood for each area. The first space station section is a brilliantly conceived tutorial stage, giving you the chance to learn the controls without completely taking you out of the experience by holding your hand. This scene is epic. You make your way to the lab where you find that the chamber that was holding the last Metroid is broken and the scientists are dead on the ground. Moving to the next room, you find the last Metroid, but as you approach you see the eyes of Ridley in the darkness. He grabs the Metroid, attacks and escapes. The space station initiates an emergency self-destruct and you have to make it back to your ship in time. After this intro, Samus tracks Ripley to planet Zebus, where the first game takes place, and the early parts of this game take you back to areas from the first game for some nostalgic feels. This planet is where you spend the rest of the game. Not mentioning any spoilers, but in a similar vein to the intro, the ending set piece of this game is worth every moment of the time it takes to complete. The gameplay pretty much invents the Metroid genre as we see it today. Gradually open up the map, find jumps you can't make and doors you can't yet open, etc. Upgrade yourself in order to become more powerful and progress. I've always enjoyed these types of games for starting off so vulnerable, but by the end of the game becoming some sort of game-breaking god. This game trusts you to learn as you play. Being critical, I remember that the Meridia stage almost ruined this game for me and I almost gave up with frustration. But after a good old read of a strategy guide and a walkthrough, I ended up making it through absolutely fine, and it's not a section that troubles me nowadays. Also, the floaty jump can feel very dodgy, making platforming infuriating at times. This is probably the only element that makes the game feel really dated, as the rest of the game holds up fantastically well and is still as good as any of the modern Metroidvanias that you see today. The repeat play value of this game is absolutely fantastic and makes it a great value for money. You could spend hours trying to find absolutely every single item and going through each area with a fine-tooth comb. The other end of the spectrum would be speedrunning. Speedrunning essentially creates limitless repeated plays when you try and complete the game faster and faster, utilising special moves that aren't in the instruction manual, such as wall jumps and the shine spark. Having these abilities in the game is so random because it actually gives you access to areas that you shouldn't be able to earlier in the game, meaning that you can beat bosses in a different order than what you're supposed to. Having this experience and playing the game like this can feel amazing, like you're breaking the game or something. I would say the first ever run through of Super Metroid will take you around the 7 or 8 hour mark, but the world record speed run for the game is around the 40-minute mark. My personal best time is 2 hours 45, which is pretty fast, but nothing like the world beating record. The legacy of Super Metroid can be felt to this very day, with games still being released such as Shadow Complex, Blasphemous, Guacamelee, Axiom Verge, many others. Limitless supplies of Metroidvanias at this point. Even modern games such as the Batman Arkham series have nods to this genre of gaming. I hope you've enjoyed this video on a game that I'm such a fan of now, and I really hope it inspires you to give it a solid go. I certainly wish that someone had introduced me to it and I'd played it back in the day. This is not one to be missed. Anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time, much love, please look after yourselves and each other and get your geek on with Jig Retro.